Welcome back to the North Antrim debate, a UTV Live Tonight special. Now, most people seem to think that this battle in North Antrim is between two people, you, Jim Allister, and you, Ian Paisley. And there are those who think it's not just a battle between the two of you, it's a personal feud. Ian Paisley?
Well, I'm not the one trying to suppress facts and take people to court in this battle. I've been the one who's gone out onto the streets, fought on my record, campaigned after 14 years of being elected in the constituency and serving the community and taking it that way. If you read my literature deals 99% with local community issues, with employment issues, with getting investment, dealing with the £17 million of investment that I helped bring to North Antrim in the last year. Unfortunately, my opponent's literature, Mr Allister's literature, happens to be just full of invective, hatred and mudslinging about me, my father, or anyone I happen to have talked to. Well, I actually have the literature here, and there's 2 pages of it. I think it mentions me about in every single aspect and just slags me off. Now, what the constituency needs and what the constituency requires, Jim. Let me just complete the point. What the constituency needs, what the constituency
hang on one second, Jim. We're going to come to you straight away.
What the constituency needs and requires is someone who's going to focus on the issues for the ordinary people, deal with them, address them week in, week out in the way that I do and I have done over the last number of years,
Allister,
instead of just throwing mud at people.
Are you throwing mud at him
and
his father?
No, the only weapon I have and the only weapon I want and need against Ian Paisley Jr. is the truth, and I tell you that's more than enough. Because the people of North Antrim, yes, they are looking for an end to the overbearing Paisley dynasty. Yes, they do not want to see it passed on to the flawed second generation, because they do want an MP. They do want an MP with good, sound judgment.
Not
an MP.
What do you mean flawed?
Well, take Mr Paisley's judgment. This is the man who his own colleague Nigel Dodds asked the question of, on what planet is he living, when he proposed that when widows and orphans were trying to get compensation from Gaddafi, what was Mr Paisley doing? He was approving the sending of PSNI officers to train Gaddafi's militia. This is the Mr Paisley who, when he went to St Andrews, thought it right to waste valuable negotiating leverage by promoting pet projects for his developer friends with the Prime Minister. This is the Mr Paisley whose judgment has been flawed at every turn.
Judgment flawed, Ian Paisley.
People are looking for someone of sound judgment with ability outside of politics, experience outside of politics, and a willingness and an
interest in doing the job. We have your point, I think, pretty well.
Well, of course, Jim Allister claims that he can represent you best. He couldn't even represent himself very well in court a couple of weeks ago because he failed.
We'll see about the outcome of that, Mr Paisley.
Well, the judgment saw about it.
Yes.
The second thing is his literature is just filled with hatred about the past MP and indeed about me. And there is nothing in here to do with jobs, employment.
Top of this page, jobs, health, education, policing. Don't
we've seen it. It's been on screen. We've seen it, Jim. We've seen it. Jim Allister, we have seen it. Go ahead, Ian.
The good Lord in His mercy give you 2 ears and 1 mouth. You should use them in that proportion. Now, the issue here is that Jim is filled with hatred and agenda against individuals. He has proved over the years a capacity that he can work with no one. He cannot get agreement even within his own party. As people like Lyle Cubitt, who unfortunately isn't here tonight.
Lyle Cubitt was never in my party.
Ran away
tell
from
the
his
truth,
party.
Ian. Tell the truth.
I think the people here. I think
we're going to come to you in a second.
People of North Antrim are not looking for a smart aleck as an MP.
Well, wait a minute.
The people of North Antrim are working for a worker, someone who had a 96% attendance record in Europe, someone who can do the job, not a smart aleck on a.
We'll come back to this. There are other people here. Erwin Armstrong. Ian, give Erwin Armstrong.
Let me speak, please. Because what's happening...
Okay, well, hang on. We do that. You've said some of that, and we will come back to it.
They don't want to see the past. We see the past here 40 years. We see the past here in the Assembly. The people that I speak to in the doors want one thing. They want to know about jobs. They want to know about the future. They want to know about progress. They don't want to know about this old history. We have passed, we have moved on, and the people of North Antrim want us to keep moving forward. I spent 30 years travelling around the world creating jobs. I know how to create jobs. I have 2 companies in Ballymena. That's what the people of North Antrim want. They don't want more bickering in the past.
Declan O'Loan, how do you see this? Because there is obviously a big battle going on here between the TUV and the DUP.
Well, it's interesting to see the Rottweilers coming out, but it's not. That's the message that I have heard from people as I've gone around is that that's not what they're looking to hear. What they're looking to hear is delivery on the jobs agenda above all, upon their education system. Take it, I hear parents saying to me, I don't know what school my youngsters are going to be going to in 2 or 3 years' time. I don't know what type of transfer system is going to be in place. Can you give me any answers on this? And they're very disappointed because they're not getting those answers. Look at their health system here. When I see frontline health posts that come vacant are not being replaced currently, and people are not getting the community care, and I've spoken to staff who are demoralised because they can't offer the level of care that they would want to be doing so. Those are the issues that people want to hear about, and that's the job for an MP, to bring that to Westminster and to bring back from Westminster what we can deliver here in Northern Ireland.
Daithí Mackay, your Minister, the Minister of Education, is a member of your party, and Declan O'Loan is criticising her. But tell me, how do you see this battle between the two people, and it's one of them who's likely to be the MP?
Well, I do agree with Declan on one point, and that is that people don't want to hear this kind of politics. People want to hear about jobs, they want to hear about health, education, all the pressing issues at a deeply worrying time economically. What we have to do is kickstart the economy again. We have to put pressure on the banks to start loaning money to our small businesses. We need to ensure that the corporation tax is lowered and harmonised across this island to ensure that we get more foreign direct investment. So we have to have a balanced economy. The priority has to be small and medium-sized enterprise, and we need to ensure that we take the levers of power in regard to the economy out of London and into local hands in the Assembly, because that is the only way that the economic best interests of people here will be served.
And yet Daithí's party leader yesterday, Gerry Adams, was saying he doesn't care whether it's a Conservative government or a Labour government. In other words, he's saying he doesn't care what level of cuts, when those cuts are applied, how those cuts are applied. You can't have it both ways.
The SDLP have rolled out going into power with the Conservative Party. They're saying they're keeping their options open.
They have not said that. That's explicitly untrue. That's explicitly untrue.
You said that you're leaving your options open. And by the way, to come back to the earlier point about Westminster attendance, your MPs last year had some of the lowest attendance rates. One MP was there for 5% of the time.
The facts
you
are
weren't
wrong.
There.
The facts
you weren't
are,
there.
The facts are that this party, the SDLP, has the best attendance record of any Northern Ireland party on the Northern Ireland Affairs Committee.
I'm coming back to you.
We have attended every single question time in 5 years.
Okay, Declan, yeah, that's fine. Now you can finish.
These are the people who are lecturing others.
Hold on a second.
The matter is that the SDLP voted for 28-day detention. They have used public money.
We voted against 90-day detention. We voted against 42-day detention.
I do
see that the Rottweilers prop the mongrel here.
I just want to. Can I move on? Jim Allister, the British governments, Labour government, Conservative government, backed by the Liberal Democrats, are in full support of what's happening in Northern Ireland. They're in full support of what's happening in Stormont. How are you go? And they've spent years putting it together. How are you going to persuade them to turn the clock back?
It's not about turning the clock back. It's about actually getting progress, because what we have is not working. The terrorist-inclusive mandatory coalition that we have is miserably failing on every front. Take education, which has been mentioned. Every house I go to, people are in despair about the chaos brought to education, about the fact that Ruan has been able and permitted to rampage through education, utterly unfettered, and brought her dogma of destruction to it. So that is one of the products, indeed one of the most telling products, of a failed Stormont. I want a working Stormont. How do we get that? How do we get that? We get that by attaching ourselves to the basics of democracy.
But you want one that Sinn Féin will not be in government in?
I do not want terrorists in government. I want to get to a system where the people have the right to vote a party out of government and a right to have an opposition. This is not North Korea, yet the citizens of Northern Ireland have no right to vote a party out of government, no right to have an opposition. We should have an assembly election. No party is big enough to form a government on its own. Those who can agree what to do about education, health, housing, they form the government. Those who can't form the opposition. And then you can change your government as you progress, and you can get stable, workable government.
Who are you going to share power with, by the way?
I would share power with anyone but terrorists. I would seek to persuade unionists and nationalists. I'm not opposed to shared government. I'm utterly opposed to terrorist government. And what I want to do is get workable, durable devolution. If Sinn Féin are only Democrats, so long as they're in government, then they're not Democrats.
Ian Paisley,
at all.
I'll come back to you in a minute. Ian Paisley, according to Jim Allister, you were in government. You were a miserable failure.
Well, look,
you had to resign, of course.
This is an election to Westminster. This is an election where the people of North Antrim require someone to go there and represent them on the issues that Westminster will take decisions on. Key issues to do with the Northern Ireland Block grant allocation. Key issues to do with, for example, our pensioners. People out there who really need an increase in their pension and need more money put into that. People who, for example, will need support in getting an investment plan back into not only the whole of the United Kingdom, but into this region of the United Kingdom and importantly into North Antrim. We need a voice. We need a voice that will do that and will be focusing on that. Not a voice that is just going to go off on issues that are to do with the Assembly and need to be addressed at local level in the Assembly.
Do you think because your father had this seat for 40 years that it's your right to have
I'm not in politics as a hobby. I'm not in politics on any basis like that.
Well, some people do seem to think it's a feudal fiefdom. I want to tell you it's for the people of North Antrim to elect their
MP. Of course it is.
Well, of course, the people of North Antrim don't live in North Korea. They live in a democracy,
which they're very proud of.
Which they're very proud of, and where they have returned me successfully over the last number of years in all the Assembly elections since 1998 and before that in 1996, when Jim was in the cosy bar library making vast sums of money from the taxpayer as well. In terms of the issue of
which of
who
you
can
two
best
people are
represent
going? Which of you two?
I can.
Which of you two are going to take the seat?
I believe that there's such an appetite for change in North Antrim that I'm finding people rallying around my cause because they do not want to see the overbearing legacy continue into this flawed second generation. They do want change.
Ian?
They want someone who will be there, who have been treated to an MP in recent years who didn't turn up for 82% of the votes, who didn't find it possible to be there to vote on abortion,
you have said that before.
Who didn't find it possible to be there to vote
Sorry,
for
you have said that before. You better...
will not be left
okay, I'm going to let Ian... Before I bring you in, I'm going to let Ian Paisley answer it. Ian.
The truth being told about himself. That's why, of course, he tried to suppress election material during this election.
I only suppressed your lies.
Well, you didn't suppress them because the court said they could be published.
And you had to admit they weren't true.
No, you're wrong.
You had to admit they weren't true.
You actually admitted they were true.
You had to admit you were trying to mislead people. You're the one who had to withdraw them.
Hold on. Enough.
Let me just say, Jim.
Okay.
There's only one candidate sitting at this table who is actually campaigning to go into government. That's me.
Ian, hold on.
Everyone else is campaigning to go into opposition.
Chair the meeting, please. This attack on the previous MP, I'm sure, doesn't have any traction whatsoever. My father did so much for his own constituency and worked for it incredibly hard. In terms of just calling unionists and other unionist names, remember, Jim has called Irwin names, he's called me.
Sorry?
He's called...
what name have I called Irwin?
Just hang on.
Don't make it up as you go along, Junior.
Who Jim
don't make it up. What have I called? What have I called Irwin?
The only person who Jim doesn't attack happens to be Sinn Féin.
No, Jim.
I think that's incredible.
Very short space of time.
Jim Allister is not
I'm going to have to...
Jim Allister did not put...
We are wrapping this programme now very quickly. I'm sorry.
Your legacy is putting terrorists in government.
Gentlemen, I'm afraid...
Those who said, out of the question, suddenly chuckling with terrorists.
Okay, gentlemen, we are going to have to wrap very quickly.
There is only one candidate sitting around this table that is campaigning to be a member of the government. The
we
rest
understand
of the people
that.
around this table are campaigning to be in opposition.
200 million cuts in Ulster.
I'm afraid we have to stop it there. No more time. For now, that was the North Antrim election debate. On screen, you can see a full list of candidates. That's there for you to see now. There are, in fact, 7 in total. Thank you for watching. Good night.